Arrival Counselor Vrith stood alone in the observation chamber of the Galactic Council Station, staring at the dark swath of space beyond the viewport. The station's artificial lighting cast long shadows across his angular features, but it did nothing to dim the tension in his chest. He adjusted the straps of his ceremonial robes, a gesture as much to steady his nerves as to maintain appearance. Today, he was not merely a representative of his species, he was the face of interstellar diplomacy, the coordinator of the peace delegation. And the peace delegation was about to meet humanity. Vrith's antennae twitched involuntarily, a subtle but unmistakable sign of anticipation among his kind. The council had insisted on personal oversight. Prepare for a shuttle, nothing more, they had said. No weapons, no surprises. Just the human ceremonial vessel and a protocol officer. Vrith had nodded, smiled, and prepared, but deep inside, a faint unease had taken root. Something about the humans was different. Their history, scattered across old star charts, spoke of ingenuity and desperation, of unity and chaos, a species that defied probability as casually as breathing. But that was history, not the present. Today, diplomacy demanded predictability. Sensors hummed softly, a low vibration that resonated through the floor beneath Vrith's feet. The council station floated in the lumen expanse, a sector designated for delicate negotiations between species known for long memories and long grudges. Vrith had walked these corridors countless times, yet the emptiness today felt more profound. Perhaps it was the anticipation, or perhaps it was the quiet knowledge that the humans, with their unpredictable nature, never arrived quietly. Energy signature approaching, his assistant reported, his voice precise but tinged with curiosity. He was a young officer, still unseasoned in the subtleties of human unpredictability. Vrith didn't turn immediately. He let his words hang, tasting the implication. The sensors flickered, a cascade of data lines flowing across the translucent holodisplay. Vrith frowned. The readings were anomalous, massive, far beyond anything a shuttle could generate. His mind raced through possibilities. A misread, a calibration error, a diversion, but instinct told him none were likely. He crossed to the terminal and activated auxiliary scans. "Confirm energy output," he demanded, his voice steady, though his heart raced. The human shuttle was supposed to be small, elegant, minimally powered. Protocols dictated subtlety. This was something else entirely. The assistant's fingers danced across the interface. "It is unprecedented, Counselor." The signature, he faltered. "It's enormous." Vrith's antennae flattened slightly. Enormous. That was not a human shuttle. That was impossible. He leaned closer to the viewport.
Whee!
The dark void of space stretched endlessly, pierced by distant suns and the faint glow of the lumen expanse's nebulae. And there, on the edge of detection, a faint shimmer began to coalesce, a distortion in space, subtle but undeniable, like heat rising off a desert plain. Vrith blinked. His mind tried to reconcile what his senses were reporting. Could it be a cloaking anomaly? He muttered, mostly to himself. Cloaking technology was rare and dangerous, reserved for warships and defensive frigates. Humans had shown no evidence of such capability. But the energy readings— "Yes, Counselor," the assistant replied cautiously. "A cloaking mechanism, but of a scale we have never documented it. It defies classification." Vrith's chest tightened. He had faced many crises in his career: border skirmishes, rogue traders, and the occasional rogue planetary militia, but nothing had ever prepared him for the possibility of encountering a human dreadnought. He had studied the history of the human fleets, their old conflicts, their legends, but history was theory. Reality was different. And now, reality was bending toward him, toward the station, with all the weight of anticipation and fear. "Prepare the welcome array," he ordered, masking the tremor in his voice. "Protocol demands our presence, regardless of size." The assistant hesitated, his gaze flicking toward the viewport. "Counselor, if this is what it seems." Vrith didn't answer immediately. He let the silence stretch, thick and heavy, as he watched the shimmer in space grow, coalescing into a shape he could almost comprehend, though the mind struggled to define it. It was massive, larger than any diplomatic vessel he had ever seen. Not a shuttle, not even a cruiser, a dreadnought. And then, without warning, the cloaking field dissipated. Vrith staggered slightly back, a rare and uncharacteristic movement. There it was, an immense ship, angular and brutal in design, dwarfing the council station itself. The hull gleamed faintly against the light of a nearby star. Its surface scarred by history, its presence screaming of both power and purpose. The Dreadnought Saul's Wrath. The name was whispered in every human legend he had read, spoken with awe and terror in equal measure. Rith's breath caught. Not for fear, though, that was there, but for understanding. Humanity had not arrived to negotiate. Humanity had arrived to declare presence. And this was their version of a handshake. He could feel it in his chest, the weight of centuries of human defiance, ingenuity, and relentless will. Every story, every legend he had studied suddenly became real. Humans did not come quietly. Humans did not come politely. Humans arrived with history, with consequence, with audacity. Counselor Vrith, his assistant, whispered, barely audible, "What? What do we do?" Vrith turned to him, his face calm, though his mind raced. "We do what the council always does," he said softly. "We welcome them. We pray they find our intentions clear." But even as the words left his mouth, he felt a quiet, unshakable certainty. The humans would not come for diplomacy. They would come for history. The galaxy was about to witness the full measure of their will. Across the observation chamber, lights flickered from the Dreadnought's hull as it oriented itself toward the station, moving with an elegance that belied its size. Sensors screamed, struggling to capture the full dimensions. Energy readings spiked, resonating through the station's core, forcing minor systems to reroute. The council had not prepared for this, no one could have. Vrith's antennae twitched in rapid succession, a physical manifestation of his racing thoughts. Protocol demanded calm, but the human display shattered every expectation. It was not merely a ship, it was a declaration. Not merely a presence, it was a challenge. And in that silent, impossibly dense moment, Vrith felt a whisper of something larger than calculation, larger than diplomacy or fear. A quiet intelligence woven into the vastness of the universe, a balance, a reason that was subtle yet undeniable. Somehow, amidst the raw audacity of the humans, it felt right. The observation chamber fell into near darkness as a solar flare from a distant star briefly lit the station. Shadows danced across Vrith's face, etching every line of uncertainty and resolve. He exhaled slowly, letting the gravity of the moment settle into his bones. "They called it madness," he murmured to himself, staring at the human dreadnought. "The humans call it Monday." And somewhere beyond the viewport, the Saul's Wrath moved silently, an ocean of metal and fire and intention, toward its place in history. Vrith's hand hovered over the communication console, his mind torn between caution and awe. Every instinct screamed for restraint, for protocol, for measured diplomacy. But every fiber of his being, every lesson in human audacity whispered the same truth. This was not a negotiation. This was history in motion. And as the station trembled under the distant hum of the human dreadnought's approach, Vrith realized the truth he had been too polite to admit aloud. The council expected a shuttle. Humanity delivered a storm. Somewhere in the dark, the humans began to pray. The tremor of giants, the station shuddered. Not violently, but with the slow, dreadful vibration of inevitability. Vrith felt it in his chest before any of the sensors could fully register it. Every panel, every corridor, every screen trembled in quiet terror, as though the station itself recognized the magnitude of what had arrived. "Counselor." His assistant's voice was tight, controlled, trembling just enough to betray his fear. "Sensors are failing." Vrith's gaze snapped back to the holodisplay. Streams of data, normally precise and elegant, had devolved into chaos. Red alerts blinked in frantic sequences, energy readings spiking far beyond safety thresholds. "Explain," he demanded, but no explanation came. Not yet. Only the faint hum, the low, resonant vibration of the human dreadnought as it held station just beyond the outer perimeter of the docking field. He took a deep breath, forcing clarity into his racing mind. The humans were here. Here, not for courtesy, not for diplomacy, not for the smooth rituals of the Galactic Council. They had arrived as they always did, with their unrelenting audacity. And the station, designed to accommodate the largest of diplomatic cruisers, was struggling under the weight of their presence. Energy readings suggest. "They are charging something," the assistant said, his words almost swallowed by the low-frequency hum vibrating the chamber. "But it's unlike anything in the Council database. No propulsion system this size should exist, let alone maintain stealth until now." Vrith frowned, his mind working through probabilities through every technical manual, every historical record he had ever studied. Yet nothing prepared him for the magnitude, the scale. Even the human fleet myth-storied and exaggerated did not convey this. The Sol's Wrath was not a fleet. It was an immovable statement of existence, a mountain forged of metal and intent. And it had come alone. The hum grew, almost sentient, filling every corridor and chamber. Some of the younger counselors whispered, eyes wide, antennae quivering. Vrith ignored them. He had learned long ago that panic spreads faster than any virus. Leadership demanded observation first, assessment second, emotion last. And yet, even he could not deny the thrill, the awe that coursed through him. Humans, always humans. He turned back to the viewport. The Dreadnought had uncloaked fully now. Its immense silhouette blocked the light of the nearby star, casting a shadow over the station so vast that it seemed the sun itself had been stolen. Vrith felt the temperature fluctuation, subtle and immediate. Systems had to compensate for the sudden drop in ambient light, and the crew whispered about a chill that wasn't just thermal, it was existential. "Visual confirmation," Vrith said quietly, almost to himself. He raised a hand, gesturing toward the viewport, and the assistant relayed the order to the crew. Every monitor pivoted, every sensor array swung, but the data still lagged behind perception. The Dreadnought was enormous, far larger than any vessel designed for diplomatic engagement. Its hull was dark, scarred by history, yet somehow elegant, precise, every panel and turret placed with careful intent. This was not chaos. This was deliberate. The assistant shivered. "Counselor." "Their weapons are raised." Vrith raised a hand. "Not yet," he said. His voice, though calm, carried the weight of command and the heavy understanding of what they were seeing. The humans weren't here to fire. They were here to be seen. The Dreadnought was a declaration, a story told in metal and energy, and its story was not of diplomacy. Its story was, humanity arrives, and the galaxy must reckon. A small, almost imperceptible movement occurred on the bridge of the station. Vrith's eyes flicked to it. Some counselors, unable to contain themselves, began scanning the Dreadnought with their personal arrays. The readings were staggering. Energy output, shield strength, propulsion systems. Internal structure, every number exceeded known engineering limits. Vrith felt his stomach tighten. The humans had arrived not with a shuttle. They had arrived with the pinnacle of their ingenuity built in desperation. Forged in a culture that revered creativity and will above all else, and in that moment, Vrith understood the humans had learned something the Council could not teach. Survival, ingenuity, and faith were not dependent on technology alone. They were a currency, a force, an unquantifiable power that turned legend into reality. The station shuddered again, more pronounced this time, as the Dreadnought shifted slightly in orbit. Sensors blinked furiously, trying to compensate, to interpret, to contain data that no protocol could manage. Vrith's antennae flattened. The humans, by their mere presence, had rewritten the rules. He turned to his assistant. "Alert the Council," he said. "Prepare all channels for communication." But he hesitated, words heavy with the gravity of the moment. "Do not expect a response. They do not negotiate with words alone." The assistant's eyes widened. "Then what do we do?" Vrith exhaled slowly, leaning against the console, every muscle coiled with tension. He looked at the viewport again. The Dreadnought's shadow stretched across the station. And for a moment, he swore he saw something more than engineering perfection. Intent. Human intent. Unyielding, unwavering, and impossible to predict. Somewhere deep in the structure of the ship, He felt a resonance, a rhythm, a pulse that seemed almost alive. Rith's heart responded not in fear, not in panic, but in recognition. This was not just a vessel. It was a human declaration. Every human who had ever survived against impossible odds, every human who had ever defied the cosmos' indifference, had been distilled into this moment, into this ship. Into this shadow over the council station, a soft chime sounded. Vrith flinched. The station's communications array had detected a signal, but it was empty. No words. No greetings. Only a broadcast pulse, resonating through the station, vibrating through the whole. A subtle hum, almost imperceptible, yet pervasive. Vrith closed his eyes. The sound. It was not meant to intimidate. It was present, a presence. And in that presence, he felt it the quiet suggestion of something greater. Not God as the council defined it, but the invisible hand of creation itself, observing, nodding perhaps at the audacity of life. The assistant whispered, "Counselor." The crew, he did not finish. The entire bridge seemed suspended in a mixture of awe and terror. The humans had arrived, and they had not spoken. They had not fired. They had simply been. Vrith's mind raced. The council would panic. Procedures would fail. Yet in the silence he understood something critical. The humans were not here to negotiate the trivialities of diplomacy. They were here to assert existence, to remind the galaxy that human ingenuity, courage, and faith were not confined to the confines of history or myth. A new alert lit the main console. Sensors were failing completely. The Dreadnought's energy field was interacting with the station's systems in ways engineers could neither predict nor control. Power fluctuations cascaded through the station, forcing emergency protocols. Lights flickered, gravity stabilizers hummed under strain, and life support adjusted automatically. Vrith ignored all of it, focusing only on the viewport. The Dreadnought moved again, imperceptibly at first, but then, with a subtle grace that belied its size, it aligned itself precisely above the station, eclipsing the artificial sun in its orbit. Darkness fell across corridors designed never to experience shadow, and the crew instinctively looked up, faces pale, Tanny quivering. Vrith swallowed. "This," he said softly, almost to himself, "is how humans make an entrance." A silence, heavy and expectant, filled the observation chamber. The station trembled under the faint but unstoppable weight of human intent. Sensors screamed in protest, but no one listened. All eyes were on the Dreadnought. All hearts recognized the moment. History was arriving, not in whispers, but in the resonant, undeniable statement of a species that refused to be small. And somewhere, in the midst of trembling consuls and anxious counselors, Vrith realized the first truth about humanity's arrival. It was not meant to be understood. It was meant to be felt, and felt it was in every nerve, every antenna, every trembling breath of the council station. The pulse of humanity, the station shuddered again, but this time the vibration was different, deliberate, almost alive. Vrith felt it in his chest before his sensors confirmed it. A pulse of energy radiated from the Dreadnought, subtle yet undeniable, like the heartbeat of a colossus. The lights flickered in response, shadows dancing violently along walls, panels, and corridors. Crew members instinctively reached for handholds, gripping consoles as if they could tether themselves to reason. "Counselor." "What is that?" The assistant's voice was barely audible over the rising hum. It's a mixture of awe and fear. Vrith did not answer immediately. He stared, unblinking, at the viewport. The pulse was not an attack, he could sense that, instinctively, but it was communication of a kind he had never encountered. It vibrated through the whole, through the air, through every particle of the station, as if the Sol's wrath was declaring, not speaking. Humanity was here, and it demanded to be acknowledged. He ran a hand through his hair, the ceremonial strands brushing against his forehead. He could feel the rhythm of the pulse matching his own heartbeats, as if the humans had learned a language that transcended words, presence, intent, resilience. Every legend about them, every cautionary tale, every fear-inducing story he had read now made sense, The assistant's fingers hovered over the console. Energy readings are, he stopped, his eyes wide. They're off the charts. The pulsets, affecting the station's systems. Life support is compensating automatically, but we're seeing anomalies across all sectors. Vrith's mind raced. The pulse was more than energy, it was subtle manipulation. A demonstration of control, of scale, of understanding physics at a level the Council had only theorized. And yet, it carried the unmistakable stamp of human ingenuity, raw, audacious, unorthodox. They were not merely using technology. They were orchestrating the environment itself. A sudden tremor ran through the observation chamber, sharp and jarring. Vrith steadied himself against the console. The shadows from the eclipsed sun shifted violently, stretching across the chamber like the fingers of some unseen deity. For a moment he saw flicker a spark of light reflected in the Dreadnought's hull, as if the ship itself were breathing. He swallowed, heart hammering. This is no ordinary vessel, he said quietly, almost to himself. It's a symphony. The assistant's antennae twitched nervously. A symphony. Vrith turned toward him, eyes sharp despite the awe in his chest. Yes, every system, every panel, every microfluctuation, it is coordinated, intentional. Humans do not arrive quietly. They do not enter gently. They compose history the same way they compose engineering, deliberately, audaciously, and with purpose. Sighed, the Dreadnought pulsed again. This time, the energy ripple expanded beyond the immediate vicinity, brushing the outer perimeter of the lumen expanse with a soft, radiant hum. It was not destructive, but it carried authority. Every system aboard the station shivered, every counselor felt it, and somewhere deep in the station's core, Vrith sensed the subtle yet undeniable truth. Humans did not negotiate on terms. Set by others, they set their own terms simply by existing. The counselors, normally so composed, whispered among themselves, trying to make sense of what they were experiencing. But Vrith understood something no manual could teach. Humans were beyond comprehension in the conventional sense. They were not merely physical beings with technological capabilities. They were a force of will, of creativity, of audacity, woven with the quiet threads of faith and resilience. Communication channels? Vrith asked, voice tight. The assistant shook his head. Nothing verbal. Only the pulse. It bypasses conventional sensors. It resonates directly with the station's systems, with our perceptions. It's almost alive. Vrith nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of his words. Alive. That was exactly it. The humans had turned a machina Dreadnought to an extension of their will. Every movement, every ripple, every pulse was intentional. They were speaking a language older than words, older than diplomacy. It was the language of survival, of presence. A sudden spark of light flickered across the observation chamber. Vrith's eyes followed it automatically, and his breath caught. The Dreadnought's main hull shifted slightly, pivoting to a line directly above the station's central axis. In that instant, the eclipsed star's light reflected off the ship's metallic surface, casting a brilliance so intense it seemed to penetrate the very walls of the observation chamber. The station's sensors screamed in protest, unable to process the magnitude. Vrith felt a cold clarity settle over him. Humanity was not here to negotiate. They were here to assert their existence, their ingenuity, and their audacity. The pulse, the sheer size, the calculated positioning, it was a declaration, and the Council would understand soon enough, whether they were ready or not. He glanced at the assistant. Prepare for possible interference, he said quietly. We don't know what else they're capable of, but... His voice trailed off as the Dreadnought pulsed again, a rhythmic beat that resonated through the hull and into the hearts of every observer. We are witnessing humanity on its own terms. The station's systems continued to fluctuate, lights dimming and brightening in time with the pulse. Gravity stabilizers adjusting in real time. Energy flows rerouting themselves without human input. Crew members held onto consoles, hearts racing, realizing they were witnessing something beyond protocol, beyond technology, beyond expectation. Vrith's mind turned inward. He thought of the countless humans who had shaped their history through adversity, stranded colonies, desperate explorers, pioneers facing impossible odds, all of them distilled into this moment, manifests in the Sol's wrath. The Dreadnought was not just a ship, it was a testament to the human spirit, to ingenuity, courage, and faith that defied reason. And somewhere, beneath the layers of awe and fear, Vrith sensed something else, a quiet, unshakable certainty. A divine touch, perhaps, or the faint hand of the universe itself, acknowledging that. Against the infinite indifference of the cosmos, life could still assert itself with courage and creativity. He could not explain it. He did not need to. The pulse intensified, radiating outward, brushing against the outer limits of the luminous expanse. Sensors overloaded, failing one by one, but Vrith felt no panic. Only clarity. Humanity did not arrive quietly. Humanity did not conform. Humanity defined the terms of their own arrival, and the galaxy would take note. He exhaled slowly, realizing that the Council's protocols, their etiquette, their centuries of careful planning, all of it had failed before the audacity of human ingenuity. They had expected a shuttle, a minor controlled event. Humanity had delivered a storm. And yet, Vrith felt the subtle presence of order amidst the chaos. The quiet intelligence of creation, as if the universe itself recognized the significance of this arrival. The pulse was more than power. It was purpose. The humans were speaking, not in words, but in existence. And somewhere in the silence, Vrith whispered, almost to himself, not luck. Someone wanted them to arrive. The station trembled again, this time not from the Dreadnought's energy, but from the weight of history forming in real time. Every counselor, every crew member, every observer felt it. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere within the colossal hull of the Sol's wrath, a single human figure stood at the bridge, surveying the distant station with calm determination. His hand rested briefly on the console, fingers tracing a faint outline, as if acknowledging the unseen presence that had guided them this far. The pulse shifted. Subtle but undeniably wave that would ripple across the station, across the council, and across the hearts of every witness. Humanity had made its statement, and Vrith, standing in awe, realized the first rule of facing humans. They never arrived quietly. Shadows over the council, the shadow fell like a blade. Vrith watched, transfixed, as the Sol's wrath shifted in orbit, its immense hull cutting across the artificial sun's light, casting a darkness over the council station that no one had prepared for. The temperature dropped imperceptibly, and yet the psychological weight pressed on every mind aboard. Even the most composed counselors felt it, a primal, instinctive acknowledgement of something vast, something undeniable. "Counselor." "The shadow," the assistant whispered, his voice trembling. It's massive. Systems are adjusting. Life support, gravity fields, emergency protocols. His words trailed into silence as the station's monitors flickered under the immense energy. Radiating from the human vessel, Vrith did not respond immediately. He leaned against the console, eyes fixed on the viewport. The shadow moved deliberately, almost sentiently, aligning itself perfectly over the central hub of the station. He felt a tight knot in his chest, a combination of awe, fear, and anticipation. Humanity did not arrive with diplomacy. Humanity arrived as inevitability. The hum from the Dreadnought grew, resonating through the hull, through the corridors, through Vrith's very bones. Crew members instinctively gripped railings, their antennae twitching with the tremors of the station's systems. Alarms flared in uneven bursts, sensors failing one by one, yet Vrith felt no panic, only clarity. "They don't come to negotiate," he muttered to himself, voice low and steady. "They come to assert." The assistant's eyes were wide, reflecting the pulsing light from the Dreadnought's hull. "Counselor, what do we do if they act?" Vrith turned to him slowly. His face was calm, but every fiber of his being thrummed with tension. "We observe, we endure, and we understand that their methods are not ours to question. The station's systems began to strain under the colossal energy presence. Gravity stabilizers hummed loudly, compensating for minor anomalies caused by the Dreadnought's proximity. Artificial lighting flickered as power rerouted. Life support adjusted automatically. Communication arrays scrambled to interpret the pulse that radiated outward. Rith exhaled slowly. Humanity was not just a species. It was a statement. Every story he had read, every cautionary tale of human ingenuity and resilience, every legend of defiance in impossible circumstances, all of it converged into this moment. The humans had taken centuries of survival, creativity, and faith and distilled it into a vessel that challenged the very logic of the Council. He felt something else, something quieter, subtler, yet no less profound. The faint, unshakable sense of order, a whisper of divine presence threading through the chaos. Not a deity in form, but the intelligence behind the cosmos. Acknowledging that life, even against impossible odds, could assert itself with purpose and courage. The Dreadnought pulsed again. A slow, deliberate rhythm that vibrated through the station's hull. Sensors overloaded, failing in waves, but the pulse was not malevolent. It was awareness, presence. The humans were announcing themselves not with words, but with the undeniable weight of existence. Rith's mind wandered to every human story he had studied. Stranded explorers on frozen worlds, colonists surviving impossible odds, scientists defying extinction with raw ingenuity. All of them distilled into this single moment. The Sol's Wrath was not just a ship. It was the embodiment of human will, faith, and defiance. A sudden alarm flared across the observation chamber. The assistant gasped. "Counselor, the outer rings. There. Shifting. Systems are failing." Vrith's antennae twitched. He understood immediately. The station itself was responding to the Dreadnought's energy. Not in chaos, not in panic, but in subtle, unavoidable adjustment. Humanity's presence was reshaping their environment, bending systems to accommodate the scale of their arrival. And yet, through it all, Vrith sensed purpose, control, intelligence. He pressed a hand to the console, grounding himself. This is how humans arrive. Not quietly, not politely. With force, perhaps, but also with intention, clarity, and unshakable resolve. Outside, the Sol's Wrath pulsed again. This time the energy ripple extended beyond the immediate shadow, brushing the outer limits of the lumen expanse. The station trembled, but Vrith did not flinch. Instead, he felt the rhythm, the intent behind it. Humanity did not attack. Humanity asserted. In every system, every counselor, every observer felt it. The assistant's voice was tight. "Counselor there," aligning with the central axis. "The station. It's responding." Vrith nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of his words. The humans were not bound by council protocol or expectation. They were bound by something older, something deeper. Necessity, ingenuity, courage, faith. And they were demonstrating it in a way no one could ignore. A soft light flickered along the station's central hub as systems compensated for the Dreadnought's energy pulse. Crew members watched in awe as panels shifted, conduits hummed, and lights adjusted automatically. The station itself seemed alive, responding to the presence of humanity as if acknowledging its place in the cosmos. Vrith's chest tightened. Humanity did not arrive to blend in. They arrived to be seen, to be acknowledged, and to assert the strength of their will against the vast indifference of the universe. And in that moment, Vrith felt a quiet certainty, a subtle whisper of the divine threading through the chaos. The universe, in its infinite intelligence, recognized the audacity of life, recognized humanity, and perhaps, in some unexplainable way, approved. He exhaled slowly, turning to the assistant. "Prepare all communications," he said quietly. "The council must witness this, not for negotiation, but for history." Outside, the shadow of the Sol's Wrath deepened, and the station trembled under the quiet weight of human will. Sensors failed, lights flickered, and yet the crew held their positions. captivated, awed, and, beneath it all, afraid. Vrith's eyes lingered on the viewport, watching as humanity's presence reshaped the very space around them. This was no shuttle. This was not diplomacy. This was history. And somewhere deep within the colossal hull of the Sol's Wrath, the humans prepared for the next step, their intentions clear, their presence undeniable. The station trembled again, not from energy or power, but from the weight of inevitability, and Vrith realized, fully and finally, the Council had expected a shuttle. Humanity had delivered a storm. The maneuver the Sol's Wrath moved again, slowly at first, as if testing the waters of the lumen expanse. Then, with a precision that made the Council Station's emergency protocols tremble, it shifted its massive hull along an angle no one had anticipated. Vrith's chest tightened not with fear, but with recognition. Humans did not move randomly. They moved decisively, audaciously, in ways no one predicted because they relied not only on calculation, but on intuition, ingenuity, and the unyielding logic of survival. Counselor Vrith, the assistant stammered, his voice tight with awe. It's aligning itself. Not with the docking bays. Not with our trajectory. It's centering over the station's core. Vrith did not speak immediately. He let the words sink in, feeling the vibration through the hull as the Dreadnought's gravity, subtle yet undeniable, brushed against the station's outer layers. Energy readings surged, sensors overloaded, and systems diverted power automatically to maintain stability. The station was alive, but it was struggling, and yet the humans were not attacking. They were orchestrating there. Controlling our environment? A junior counselor whispered, nearly inaudible over the hum. How? How can a ship? Vrith's eyes narrowed, antennae twitching. Not controlling, coordinating. Humans do not impose, they influence. They do not dominate, they assert. And this is proof. The Dreadnought's pulse changed rhythm, shifting subtly, brushing the outer systems of the station like an invisible conductor guiding a symphony. Lights flickered in synchronization, emergency protocols adapted in real time, and gravity stabilizers hummed in strained harmony. Crew members clung to consoles, eyes wide, realizing that the humans were demonstrating mastery of more than just technology. They were demonstrating mastery of the environment itself. Vrith's mind raced through calculations. Historical analogs, and every human legend he had studied. None of it was sufficient. Humans had survived the impossible countless times, improvising, defying expectation, combining creativity with audacity. And now, they had distilled that history into a single, colossal maneuver that rendered the Council's protocols obsolete. The assistant's hands flew over the controls. Counselor, if they continue life support and stabilizers, they might. Vrith shook his head slowly. Do nothing that could be interpreted as interference. Observe, record, learn. This is how humans define presence. This is how they make history. Outside, the Sol's Wrath's hull shimmered with energy as it rotated slightly, aligning itself over the station with terrifying precision. For a moment, Vrith thought he saw the entire station respond as if it were part of a mechanism far larger than itself. Emergency lighting flickered, gravity shifts subtly, and crew members instinctively adjusted their footing. Every sensor screamed in protest, yet every human observer aboard the Dreadnought would recognize a method to the chaos, a dance of physics and intention orchestrated perfectly. And then came the subtle, almost imperceptible change in pressure, the bending of light as the massive ship eclipsed the artificial sun completely. Shadows deepened into darkness that was almost tangible, and for the first time, Vrith understood fully what it meant to stand under human will, utterly dwarfed, yet aware that every part of this event had been chosen with deliberation. With ingenuity, with purpose, the assistant's voice broke the silence. Counselor there, preparing something. I can feel it. In the sensors, in the station. It's as if his words faltered as the hum deepened, resonating across the hull and shaking even the nerves of the most seasoned officers. Vrith's hand rested on the console, grounding himself. As if what? He prompted quietly. As if they are. Writing their own history, he whispered, his voice tight, and we are living it. Vrith did not answer. He only watched as the Dreadnought shifted again, releasing a concentrated pulse of energy into the lumen expanse. This was no attack. There were no weapons fired. No destructive beams. Only presence. Only weight. Only audacity. And yet, every system aboard the Council Station responded. Every protocol struggled, and every mind aboard felt the undeniable truth. The humans had arrived, and they had rewritten the rules. The station trembled, and for a moment, Vrith swore he felt the subtle guidance of something greater, an invisible hand threading through the chaos, balancing the scale, acknowledging the audacity and courage of life in the universe. The human maneuver was audacious, reckless even by conventional standards, yet it carried an unspoken logic, a rhythm that resonated beyond technology into the realms of instinct and survival. Vrith's eyes flicked to the communication console. Channels blared with static, systems overloaded. Yet there was no voice, no request, no demand, only the pulse of human presence. Radiating through space like a heartbeat, he turned to the assistant. Record everything. Not for the council, not for protocol, but for understanding. This is not a battle, not a negotiation. This is history being made in real time by the species the galaxy has underestimated for centuries. The assistant nodded, his eyes wide, antennae quivering. And, Counselor, what if they do not leave after this? Vrith exhaled slowly, the shadow of the Dreadnought deepening across the station. Then we survive. Then we learn, and then we remember. Because humans, they do not simply arrive. They endure, they adapt. And they make every moment a declaration of will, courage, and ingenuity. The pulse intensified again, extending across the station's outer layers, brushing corridors, shaking systems, yet not destroying. Vrith realized that humanity's display was not an act of aggression. It was a demonstration. We exist. We endure. We will not be underestimated. And somewhere deep in the Sol's wrath, a figure stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind his back, observing the station with calm precision. Every movement, every calculation, every pulse of energy radiating outward carried the distilled essence of human history: faith, ingenuity, courage, and defiance. Vrith felt it in his chest. In his heart, in his very soul, humanity did not arrive quietly. Humanity did not wait for permission. Humanity wrote its own history. And the galaxy, every counselor, every observer, every system was witness. And in that shadow, beneath the massive hull of the Sol's wrath, Vrith whispered almost reverently, "Not luck. Someone wanted them to arrive. And they wanted us to see." The station quivered again, systems straining under the human presence, yet somehow enduring. And in that moment, Vrith understood fully. The humans had not merely arrived, they had claimed their place in the universe. Unapologetically, unyieldingly, and beautifully. The revelation of intent, the Sol's wrath, did not move like a mere vessel. It moved like an idea force, deliberate, inevitable, and impossible to ignore. The shadow over the council station deepened, stretching across corridors, observation decks, and the central hub. Every system aboard shuddered subtly, like a living thing responding to the audacity of human presence. Counselors muttered among themselves, antennae quivering. Some whispered in fear, others in awe. Vrith ignored all of it. His eyes were fixed on the viewport, on the colossal silhouette that eclipsed the artificial sun completely. Humanity was not here to negotiate. Humanity was here to declare, and for the first time, the full scope of their intent became undeniable. There, positioning over the central axis of the station, the assistant said, his voice tight with disbelief, "Every sensor, every system, it's all being affected. The station, it's responding." Vrith exhaled slowly. He had faced anomalies, emergencies, even rogue fleets, but nothing had ever prepared him for the purposeful inevitability of human design. The Sol's Wrath was not merely a warship. It was a statement. We exist. We endure. We define the terms of our arrival. He placed a hand on the console, feeling the subtle hum resonate through his bones. The energy readings were staggering beyond anything in the Council database. And yet, despite the apparent chaos, Vrith sensed an underlying order, a quiet intelligence threading through every pulse, every vibration, every shadow. Humans were audacious. Humans were relentless. And somehow, inexplicably, the universe seemed to acknowledge it. Counselor. A junior officer whispered, his eyes wide. There. Sending a signal. Not words. Not communication. But a pulse. A rhythm. Almost musical in its structure. It's affecting the station, the outer sensors. Even the consciousness of some crew members. It's as if they are speaking to us directly through the very systems we rely on. Vrith's chest tightened. He nodded slowly. Humans have never relied on protocol alone, he murmured. They rely on ingenuity, willpower, creativity, and faith. Every vessel, every maneuver, every action, they are not constrained by expectation. They shape it. The pulse intensified. It radiated outward, brushing corridors, twisting light. Bending energy flows in ways that engineers could not have predicted. Lights flickered. Gravity stabilizers adjusted automatically. Life support redistributed resources to compensate for the subtle influence of the Dreadnought's energy field. Crew members instinctively held onto consoles, hearts pounding, realizing they were witnessing something beyond calculation, beyond prediction. Vrith's eyes lingered on the bridge monitors. Somewhere deep in the hull of the Sol's Wrath, humans moved with calm precision, each action deliberate, each pulse measured. This was not chaos. This was audacity, tempered by discipline, improvisation balanced by foresight. They were writing their own history, and the galaxy was an audience to their declaration. A counselor on the opposite side of the observation chamber whispered, "It's magnificent, terrifying, and yet beautiful." Vrith exhaled, feeling a strange calm settle over him amidst the chaos. He understood now. The humans were not merely imposing their presence. They were asserting their story, their ingenuity, their defiance. Every pulse, every shadow, every shift of the Dreadnought was a chapter in a narrative that had been centuries in the making. He turned to the assistant. "Prepare all channels. Not to communicate with them. Humanity does not negotiate on our terms, but to observe, to record, to learn." The assistant hesitated. "And if they act?" Vrith shook his head slowly. "They will act according to their own design. Our role is not to stop them. Our role is to witness, to endure, and to understand." Outside, the Sol's Wrath pulsed again, this time a slower, heavier rhythm. The shadows shifted slightly, aligning the station within a faint ellipse of energy that radiated across the outer rings. Vrith felt it in his chest, a subtle vibration synchronized with the pulse. He realized that humanity was not here to negotiate. They were here to teach a lesson in audacity, in ingenuity, in the force of will distilled into a machine of impossibility. A faint reflection of light glinted off the Dreadnought's hull. Vrith squinted. For the first time, he thought he could perceive the humans themselves, small figures moving with calm precision. Indifferent to fear, indifferent to protocol. Entirely focused on the execution of their intent, he whispered almost reverently, "Not luck. Someone wanted them to arrive, and they wanted us to see it." The assistant's antennae twitched nervously. "Counselor." The station. Vrith's gaze returned to the viewport. The station itself seemed to respond, systems compensating automatically. Corridors adjusting energy flows, panels illuminating in a faint symphony of human influence. The pulse resonated not just through machinery, but through the minds of those observing. A subtle imprint of presence that was both awe-inspiring and humbling. And then the final, unmistakable sign of intent appeared. The Dreadnought shifted again, pivoting to block the artificial sunlight entirely, casting the entire station into a darkness so profound it was almost sacred. Every eye turned outward, every mind suspended, every heart racing in a shared recognition. Humanity had arrived not as guests, not as petitioners, not as negotiators. Humanity had arrived as a force. Vrith felt something deep within him, a quiet, unshakable certainty. The humans were not merely surviving. They were asserting. They were enduring. They were shaping history in ways the Council had never imagined. And in the subtle threads of the universe itself, he felt the faint presence of something greater. Quiet acknowledgement. A cosmic nod to the audacity of life, a crew member muttered. Almost inaudibly, they expected a shuttle. Vrith completed the thought, voice low and reverent, and we faced a storm. And somewhere in the shadowed hull of the Sol's Wrath, the humans readied themselves for the next step, fully aware of the awe, the fear, and the inevitability of what they had set in motion. The station quivered under the weight of human intent. Systems straining, yet enduring. As history unfolded silently, yet irrevocably around every observer, and Vrith knew, nothing would ever be the same. The unveiling for a moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath. The hum of the Sol's Wrath deepened, resonating across the void and through the station's hull. Then, almost imperceptibly at first, ripple of light began to shimmer along the Dreadnought's edges. Vrith's eyes widened. The ship, already impossibly large, already a monument to human audacity, was about to make its next declaration. The assistant froze beside him, his fingers hovering over the console, antennae trembling. There, reversing the cloak, he whispered. Counselor, it's happening. The Dreadnought shifted slightly and a brilliance erupted, a flare of energy so intense that sensors briefly overloaded and then struggled to stabilize. Light cascaded across the station, refracting against panels and observation windows, illuminating corridors in blinding clarity. Shadows danced violently, then vanished, replaced by the full, unyielding presence of humanity's ultimate dreadnought. Vrith felt his chest tighten. Every counselor, every crew member, every observer aboard the station was forced to witness the impossible. The Sol's Wrath was immense beyond known engineering limits, beyond expectation, beyond imagination. Its hull was scarred by history, polished to precision, adorned with the subtle elegance of a civilization that refused to submit to limits. Turrets bristled, shields shimmered with an iridescent hue, and the energy conduits pulsed rhythmically, a heartbeat of human resolve. They expected a shuttle, a junior officer murmured, his voice tight, awe-stricken. And we face a dreadnought. Vrith did not respond. He could feel the subtle pull of the ship's energy, the influence of its deliberate presence on the station's systems. Life support, gravity, communication, arrays, adjusted, compensated, and endured. The humans were not attacking. They were revealing. Every calculation, every maneuver, every pulse of energy was a message. We exist. We endure. We define our arrival. The assistant's antennae quivered. Counselor. The readings? It's off the charts. There's something else. Not just power. Presence. Intent. Humanity's intent. Vrith nodded slowly, feeling the hum in his chest sync with the Dreadnought's pulse. Yes, he murmured. They are not merely showing strength. They are showing purpose. They are demonstrating what it means to endure, to defy, and to assert themselves in a universe that has underestimated them for centuries. The station trembled. Responding subtly to the colossal energy field radiating outward, panels flickered, conduits hummed, and the observation windows reflected the overwhelming brilliance of the human dreadnought. Crew members instinctively clasped consoles, standing frozen between fear and awe, unable to look away, and then Vrith saw a faint, almost imperceptible pattern in the hull's energy conduits, a rhythm that pulsed with deliberate precision. It was not random. It was not chaotic. It was a statement, a symphony, a declaration of human ingenuity distilled into metal, power, and presence. They're performing a coordinated pulse, the assistant whispered. Across the entire ship, across the station, across reality itself almost. It's as if they are speaking without words, communicating through influence. Vrith's mind raced. He had studied human history, human ingenuity, human defiance. He had read of colonies surviving impossible odds, explorers defying extinction, scientists overcoming the unthinkable. And now, all of that history, all of that spirit, had been distilled into this moment, into this vessel, into this presence before the council. A soft vibration ran through the station's hull, subtle but profound. Crew members shivered instinctively, aware of something greater than themselves. Vrith felt it too, in the pit of his stomach, in the rhythm of his heart, the faint presence of something divine, something vast threading through the chaos. Acknowledging audacity, courage. In faith, the Dreadnought pulsed again, more intensely this time. Light flared across the observation windows, casting the station into stark contrast between shadow and brilliance. Every system aboard the station responded, overcompensating, adjusting, enduring, but none could diminish the statement the humans were making. They were not here to negotiate. They were here to announce. Vrith turned to the assistant. "Record everything," he said quietly. "Not for the council, not for protocol, but for understanding. This is history. This is audacity. This is the human spirit distilled into form, energy, and presence." Outside, the Sol's wrath shifted slightly, releasing another pulse that brushed the outer limits of the lumen expanse. Sensors flared, communications scrambled, and every observer aboard the station felt it a subtle but undeniable imprint of human intent. The assistant's antennae twitched nervously. Counselor? There. Preparing for something else. A final maneuver, perhaps? Vrith's eyes narrowed, antennae stiff. "Then we observe," he said. "We endure. We witness. And we remember. Humanity does not arrive quietly. Humanity does not follow rules. Humanity creates its own history." The pulse intensified again, synchronized across the Dreadnought's energy arrays. The shadow deepened further, encompassing the station in darkness and light, chaos and order. Every observer felt it, every heart racing, every mind stretched, every system straining under the quiet weight of human audacity, and somewhere deep within the bridge of the Sol's wrath, humans moved with calm precision. Fingers hovered over controls, eyes scanned systems. Minds calculated possibilities, and hearts beat with the rhythm of countless ancestors who had survived, defied and endured against impossible odds. Vrith exhaled slowly, a sense of awe settling over him. Humanity had not merely arrived. Humanity had unveiled themselves fully. They had written a declaration that the galaxy could not ignore. And beneath the brilliance, beneath the hum, beneath the calculated audacity, Vrith felt the faint, undeniable echo of divinity as subtle acknowledgement. Threading through the cosmos, recognizing courage, ingenuity, and faith, the station trembled again. Systems strained but endured. Shadows and light intertwined across observation decks and corridors, and in the silence between the pulses, Vrith whispered almost reverently, "Not luck. Someone wanted them to arrive. And now, the galaxy must reckon." The audacity of arrival, the silence before action was deafening. Vrith could feel it in the station's hull, in the tremor of every system, in the subtle pull of anticipation that threaded through every officer and counselor aboard. The Sol's wrath hung in the void, colossal and unyielding, its pulse resonating through the lumen expanse like a living heartbeat. Every observer knew this moment would define history. Then it moved, not with haste, not with chaos, but with deliberate, breathtaking precision. The Dreadnought's hull rotated, pivoted, and executed a maneuver that defied expectation, physics, and imagination. Its trajectory was impossible on arc that placed the station at the center of its gravitational influence without touching a single module. Systems flared as energy redistributed itself in real time. Lights flickered, and gravity stabilizers strained under the sheer audacity of the move. Vrith's chest tightened. His antennae twitched. He could feel the subtle interplay of forces through the hull, the intricate rhythm of energy that indicated intent beyond human comprehension, or so the council would think. They're orbiting us," the assistant gasped, his voice trembling. but not in any pattern we recognize. It's controlled chaos. Frith shook his head slowly, eyes fixed on the viewport. Controlled chaos, he murmured. Humans don't follow rules. They create them. They adapt. They endure. And they define every moment they touch, counselors murmured nervously. Their protocols and centuries of diplomacy crumbling against the undeniable audacity of the human maneuver. They had expected a shuttle, a small craft, with modest firepower, modest presence, modest demands. What they received was a revelation. Humanity had arrived as inevitability itself, bending the environment to demonstrate presence, control, and ingenuity. Outside, the Sol's wrath pulsed again. The energy wave swept across the station, not destructive, but transformative. Panels shimmered with recalibrated lights, conduits hummed in perfect synchronization, and gravity adjusted subtly to accommodate the presence of the colossal ship. Crew members clutched consoles, feeling the rhythm, the intent, the audacity of every movement. Vrith realized something profound. The humans had not merely mastered technology. They had mastered circumstance, probability, and perception itself. They were not here to negotiate. They were here to assert the truth of their existence, the depth of their ingenuity, and the audacity of their will. The assistant's eyes widened. Counselor, the maneuver, it's not just physical, it's psychological. Every observer, every system, it's influencing perception. There, teaching us what it means to be human. Vrith exhaled slowly. Yes, he said, voice low. Humans survive by ingenuity, by courage, by creativity. They endure by faith, by will, by defiance. And now, they are showing us exactly why the galaxy has underestimated them for too long. The Sol's wrath executed another pivot, its immense hull eclipsing the artificial sun once more. Shadows stretched across the station in sharp relief, painting every corridor, every observation deck, every counselor's face with darkness and light. The pulse of energy vibrated through the hull, through the minds of observers, and through the very perception of reality itself. Vrith felt a subtle tremor, not fear, not panic, but awe. Humanity had transformed presence into proof, maneuver into narrative, and audacity into inevitability. Every legend, every story of human defiance, every chronicle of ingenuity and survival, every one of them distilled into this single, perfect declaration of existence. They expected a shuttle, a junior officer whispered, barely audible. And we face a human storm. Vrith's eyes narrowed. Not a storm, he corrected softly. A statement. They are not here to overwhelm. They are here to declare, to endure, to teach, to be seen, and to be understood. Somewhere within the bridge of the Sol's wrath, humans moved with calm precision. Fingers hovered over controls, eyes scanned readings, minds anticipated reactions with the clarity born of centuries of survival, ingenuity, and faith. They did not hurry. They did not panic. They did not compromise. They acted as humans always had, boldly, with courage, and with the quiet acknowledgement of a force far greater than themselves guiding them. Through impossible odds. The assistant's voice trembled again. Counselor, they're preparing another pulse. Larger, wider. It's encompassing the station completely. Vrith's gaze returned to the viewport. The Dreadnought's next maneuver would leave no doubt. Humanity had not arrived to negotiate protocol. Humanity had not arrived to seek permission. Humanity had arrived to assert, to endure, and to define a presence that the galaxy could not ignore. He exhaled slowly, a strange calm settling over him. He understood now. The humans had distilled centuries of ingenuity, courage, and defiance into a single vessel, a single maneuver, a single presence that reshaped reality around them. And somewhere, threading through the chaos, Vrith felt it again, the faint, subtle acknowledgement of something greater, a whisper of the divine, a quiet hand guiding audacity and courage into perfect form. The station quivered under the human pulse. Systems strained, panels flickered, and every observer felt the weight of history unfolding in real time. And in that moment, Vrith whispered, almost reverently, "Not luck." Someone wanted them to arrive, and now, everyone will see why. Outside, the Sol's wrath pulsed. One final time, a controlled, deliberate wave of energy that rippled across the station and into the lumen expanse. Every observer felt it, a tangible imprint of human presence, will, and ingenuity. Humanity had arrived. Humanity had declared itself, and the galaxy would never be the same. The human declaration, the lumen expanse, held its breath. Even the artificial sun seemed to hesitate behind the colossal hull of the Sol's wrath, refracting its brilliance into the endless void. The station's systems hummed and strained, panels flickering, gravity stabilizers adjusting, life support compensating, all synchronized with the pulse of human ingenuity. Every observer aboard the council station knew, deep in their core, that nothing would ever be the same. Vrith stood motionless, eyes locked on the viewport, antennae twitching in measured anticipation. The humans had demonstrated audacity. They had demonstrated presence. They had eclipsed the station and bent its very systems to their will without a single word. A single weapon fired, a single demand voiced. Now, for the first time, the full purpose of their arrival became undeniable. There, initiating a final maneuver, the assistant whispered, his voice trembling. Something extraordinary. Vrith's chest tightened, a familiar mixture of awe and clarity. "Then we witness," he said quietly. "We endure. We remember." Outside, the Sol's wrath rotated, pivoting with impossible precision. Its hull emitted a synchronized flare of energy that cascaded across the station like a wave of deliberate light and purpose. Every corridor, every observation deck, every council chamber bathed in the brilliance of human intent. The station trembled, systems compensating, yet no structure faltered. The humans were not breaking the council, they were teaching it a lesson in presence. Ingenuity and audacity. A wave of energy radiated outward. Subtle, yet undeniable, brushing against the very consciousness of those aboard. Crew members instinctively paused, hearts pounding, senses stretched beyond technical comprehension. Vrith felt it deep in his chest, a resonance, not just of machinery, but of human will, creativity, and courage distilled into form and energy. The Dreadnought pivoted again, aligning its massive hull so that the station floated in the center of a deliberate ellipse of light and shadow. The pulse intensified, a slow, rhythmic vibration that synced with the natural heartbeat of every observer. It was a message, clear and unyielding. Humanity has arrived. Humanity endures. Humanity will define its place. Vrith exhaled, his mind tracing centuries of human history, every story of ingenuity and courage, every survival against impossible odds. All of it had led to this moment, the distilled essence of human resilience. Audacity and faith manifest in a single colossal vessel. And through it all, he sensed the subtle presence of something greater, a quiet acknowledgement threading through the cosmos. As if the universe itself recognized audacity, endurance, and purpose, the assistant's eyes widened. Counselor there, transmitting something, not words, not signals, but a presence. A declaration. Vrith's antennae twitched. He understood immediately. The humans were not negotiating. They were not requesting. They were asserting. They were writing history not with ink, not with speech, not with diplomacy, but with energy, intent, audacity, and existence itself. The station quivered under the pulse, and then, with a brilliance that made every observer instinctively shield their eyes, the Dreadnought's hull reflected the artificial sun, now fully eclipsed, sending beams across the observation windows, illuminating the station in stark contrast, shadow and light intertwined, fear and awe interlaced. Vrith felt a weight settle upon him, a profound recognition of human ingenuity distilled into form, motion, and presence. The Sol's wrath did not merely occupy space, it redefined it. It did not merely arrive, it commanded acknowledgement. It was a monument to courage, faith, and audacity, a junior officer whispered, his voice tight with awe. They expected a shuttle. And we faced history. Rith's eyes glimmered. Not history, he corrected softly. A declaration. Humanity has arrived, and the galaxy must remember it. The Dreadnought's pulse began to wane, fading slowly like the final note of a symphony. The station's systems adjusted, stabilizing. Yet every observer felt the imprint of human audacity etched into their consciousness. Humanity had not merely arrived. Humanity had defined its arrival. In every counselor, every crew member, every observer knew that no record, no protocol, no legend could ever capture the weight of what they had witnessed. And then, as the last of the light and pulse subsided, Vrith turned to the assistant. His voice was quiet, reverent, and unshakable. Not luck. Not coincidence. Someone wanted them to arrive. Someone wanted the galaxy to see what it means to endure, to defy, to create. And now, the humans have spoken. Outside, the Sol's wrath hovered silently, its bridge alive with calm determination. The crew, small against the colossal vessel, stood with quiet pride. Fingers brushed controls, eyes scanned the void, and hearts beat with the rhythm of countless generations who had survived, defied, and endured. The shadow of the Dreadnought receded slightly, revealing the artificial sun once more, but the impact remained. The Council Station, its systems, and its observers were irrevocably changed. Humanity had arrived, not quietly, not politely, but with the full force of history, audacity, and ingenuity behind them, and somewhere, threading through the vastness of space, the subtle presence of the divine lingered, not as a voice, not as form, not as command, but as acknowledgement. As the quiet hand that allows courage, faith, and will to manifest against impossible odds. The universe itself seemed to pause. Recognizing the arrival of something remarkable, Vrith exhaled slowly, eyes lingering on the viewport. Humanity did not negotiate. Humanity did not wait for permission. Humanity endured, humanity declared. And the galaxy finally understood. The station trembled once more, not from force, but from the weight of presence, the inevitability of history in motion. And somewhere, deep in the bridge of the Sol's wrath, a human officer whispered quietly to himself, "This is only the beginning." The galaxy would never be the same.